Hi everyone, I'm John Rennie and thanks for joining me here in the Boneyard. For this episode, I wanted to look at what makes a scary movie work and what creates horror that stays with us long after the movie credits roll. And I thought, what a better place to start than a movie that terrified me as a young film fan. So please turn out the lights and turn up the sound as we take a look at William Lustig's controversial 1980 horror classic, Maniac. I recently bought the 2010 Blue Underground release of Maniac because I decided that I wanted to watch the movie again. Now this doesn't always happen, but I had some trepidation about watching it again because I had very vivid memories of this movie terrifying me when I was in my early teens. I remember lying on my bed, watching the old grainy VHS, which was probably a second or third generation copy at that time. And bit by bit, throughout the movie, I found myself curling up in a ball in terror. And by the end of the movie, I was so terrified, I lay there in silence for a moment in order to come back down to reality and bring myself down from the grip of pure fear. Maniac is one of the only horror movies to ever give me that kind of scary experience in my whole film viewing odyssey.
You want to look pretty, don't you? Pretty for me.
Director William Lustig said that the idea for Maniac originated from Frank Pesch, the actor and writer.
I had to take a leak.
You always take a leak with a gun in your hand? It's a good way to blow your balls off.
Who, discussing films with him, said, "Why don't you make a film like Jaws, but on land?" And that was the origin of Maniac, Jaws, but the monster was inside of a man. So that is why we get the terrifying opening of the movie at the beach, because it's a homage to the idea that started the movie as it shares the shark's stalking point of view. Joe Spinell, the lead actor playing serial killer Frank Zito, whose namesake is a reference to famous director Joseph Zito, also took his role very seriously in Maniac, and even turned down a bigger paycheck to star in the movie. It is said that Spinell was very passionate about the story of an abused young man who turns into a vicious predator, and he improvised a lot of his own dialogue in the terrifying scenes of flashbacks and moments of spine-chilling insanity.
I'll be right back. Maniac is a horror movie that came out of the front pages, actually, of the New York Post and the Daily News about a child who was abused by his mother, who grew up, as many of them did, and goes around whenever he gets tweaked off, killing women. But it's a horror movie in the true sense of horror, that we do all the effects completely on camera, and they're all done as kind of unique. So if you don't like a lot of blood and gore, don't come and see it. But if you're interested in horror movies, it certainly is the
Mr. Rupert, do you like horror
scariest
movies?
of all.
And watching the work and trying to figure out what scares me about the movie this time around, I think that my fear of it is in big part because of the sound of Maniac. When serial killer Zito acts out these frightening moments of insanity, the scenes seem quite obviously dubbed even on first viewing. But this dubbing technique makes the voices seem more terrifying. It sounds as if Zito is whispering right into your ear, like the voices that he himself can hear. For this review, I actually watched the movie late at night with the sound coming through noise-cancelling headphones, and boy, oh boy, did it scare me. The voices in Zito's mind and the words he speaks to himself have a feel like an ASMR experience, and chills literally ran through my body as I watched and listened. And once again, Maniac terrified me just as much as it had all those years ago, and to me, that is the sign of a powerful movie, a movie that works. Listening to the commentary of the film, which I would highly recommend to any physical media or horror fans, director Lustig talked about his process for working with sound, and it all began to make sense. Lustig was working with Dolby Sound for the first time, and he said that in the edit with Lorenzo Marinelli and composer Jay Chataway, they intentionally distorted and worked with low frequencies to create a feeling of unease within the film's soundscape.
You got to stop, or they'll take you away from me.
They panned voices from left or from one speaker to another to the right, and Lustig himself said,
We were doing this picture again, we didn't know what the rules were. So we tried all kinds of crazy things with the music. We would do things like, put music on different sides of the channels and go back and forth. We tried every kind of thing to try to punch up the movie.
He continued that in scenes in Zito's home, they took out all of the exterior sounds of the world so that Zito's world felt in complete isolation from the outside world.
I have to go out, and each time it's like this. I get so scared that they'll take you away.
In one of the famous lines of dialogue, Zito states, I know I have to go out tonight. And you feel the pure insanity of his character, which also gives us that chilling tagline for the movie, I warned you not to go out tonight.
Miss me.
There is very careful craft and thought put into the technical aspects of Maniac that elevate it, and I think make it an uncomfortable experience for the viewer, which helps to give the film this power.
You're mine now forever.
As a movie fan, I think this is some of the best work that I have ever heard in the horror genre, and it's a masterful use and technique of sound from William Lustig and his crew to get a response from an audience.
The sound here, we deliberately went for right here, this very high-pitched scream. And when we make the cut to this next shot, you'll notice there's a very low energy. This film was one of the first pictures to use Dolby Stereo, and what we tried to do is use the total frequency range. And in fact, in a lot of theaters where this film played, the speakers would rumble from the frequency of this low energy sound here.
Love Maniac, or run away from it as many audiences and critics did at the time of its release, it is certainly one of the most tense experiences I think ever created in low-budget cinema.
Christine, the movie is Maniac, and the billboards themselves are pretty gruesome. Moviegoers tonight told me the plot is a man who hated his mother goes out and kills women. Tonight I asked moviegoers who had just seen the film if they thought it was potentially injurious to women.
Yeah, I'm gonna be scared to walk out at night, really, now.
Would you think that a movie like that would inspire violence toward women?
Yeah, I think some guys might have ideas watching this, if they're sick-minded coming in here, you never know.
It bothers you to see some guy like Whittaker, for instance, who's convicted of doing torture and murder on young girls, but it doesn't bother you to see this?
Well, no, not really, because in the movie, well, it's just a movie, it's fiction, but in Whittaker's case, that's true.
This doesn't give you nightmares?
No, not
If you
at all.
were a young woman, do you think it might?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be seeing it if I was a young woman.
So far, the movie management there told me the movie is doing a fair business. This was its first day.
Jay Chataway's music is also an indispensable part of what makes Maniac tick. Literally tick in the opening scenes, which Lustig said were a homage to the ticking clocks in the opening scene of the 1976 Swedish movie Bo Widerberg's Man on the Roof. The influence is quite apparent in that clip, and it is perfect for creating the insane world of Maniac. I can certainly see why Lustig chose that film as an inspiration for Zito's home. There are several remasters of Jay Chataway's score out there to buy today, and while writing this review, I began to listen to the soundtrack on repeat, and it quickly became apparent that the real-world sounds mixed in with the score, such as Zito's scary inner voices and the heavy breathing and the exaggerated sounds of the beach in the opening scene or the ticking clock, create an otherworldly feel because Lustig made the creative decision to isolate these sounds. And this eerie separation of Zito's world that has no atmosphere compared to the outside world adds to the tension and the unease of the whole movie by making us hear and feel what is going on inside the head of a deranged mind that not only sees hallucinations, but hears the world differently and distorted as well.
I can't go out for a minute. It's impossible.
In Zito's world, normal and natural sounds begin to sound unnatural because of their prominence within the soundscape and soundtrack of the movie.
Every time you go out, this kind of thing happens. This has got to stop.
Maniac is quite terrifyingly beautiful in its use of immersive storytelling with sound. And still to this day, I don't feel I've had quite another immersive sound experience quite like it.
I told you not to go out tonight, didn't I?
The film's composer, Jay Chataway, also commented on the juxtaposition of the theme music to the violence in the movie. He said that
you'd think the theme from Maniac would be some real ultra-violent thing, but instead it was a solo flute-type instrument and some strings and very delicate kind of a harpy bell, piano-esque kind of a music that sort of hopefully got you into the head of this character and made you want to kind of feel sorry for him. That way when he actually did his deed, it was such a contrast. It was manipulative, of course, but that's what music in those kind of genre films has to be.
Lustig himself commented on the music that
what I thought was the great attribute of Jay's music in here was that he gave the character sympathy. Is that you actually found yourself having an empathy for this character, and yet he was committing these atrocious acts.
And that makes complete sense when I think about how I felt watching this movie. Through carefully crafted sound, acting, and cinematic composition, Lustig gave Zito his own world, his own apartment, and an inner life that is so clearly defined in the sound of the film that he seems to be a completely believable character.
I was afraid that you wouldn't come back. But I won't cry now.
Joe Spinell, through performance, gave Zito a grounding in a monstrous reality that the character had lived before the movie begins and had created him. And Lustig and the crew made that inner fear that Zito feels come alive in the cinematic execution of this twisted story. It is these elements combined that I think makes me so afraid of Maniac and the incredibly insane yet believable world that these filmmakers created. In his own words, Lustig said he wanted to make the film scary and disturbing as much as his influences such as Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte. But he wanted to take scary and disturbing past the limit. And I think with Maniac, he certainly achieved his goal with a clear vision and especially an understanding of sound design techniques. And of course, the look of Maniac plays a huge part in its success as a horror film as well. Maniac was a passion project for Lustig and Spinell, both of who put their own money into the project. Lustig from his distribution work in the adult film business, and Spinell from his acting paycheck that he earned in William Friedkin's classic Cruising, which deserves a special mention because Spinell's character in Cruising is just as creepy as Maniac. In Cruising, he plays a corrupt cop in a head-turning performance when he delivers the lines in the opening of the film. It is not too dissimilar from the way that Frank Zito talks in Maniac. So I think it might have had a small inspiration on his performance in Lustig's Maniac.
One day this whole city's gonna explode. Just to be able to play stickball on these streets. Christ, what's happening?
Joe Spinell gave his all to these roles and deserves great credit, I think, for his talent.
This is my first movie that actually I co-produced with Bill Lustig, the director, and Andy Garoni, the producer, two young boys, and I wrote it and I star in it, my first starring role. It's a horror movie. A lot of people, I'm sure, will not get off on it. My mother watches it like through her hands. You know. And it's going to open this Friday at the Cinerama.
To save cost in the production of Maniac, Lustig chose to shoot on 16mm. And watching the Blu-ray, I have to say that this remaster from the negative looks great. And I'm sure that when I have the money, I'll upgrade to 4K, because the care that Lustig took in preserving the film within his own distribution company, Blue Underground, is fantastic. And in an interview recently, Lustig talked about his ownership of Blue Underground and how much of a passion project the company actually is, being only Lustig himself and one employee.
I mean, having stumbled upon the 16mm negative, which is a story in itself, having discovered the 16 negative of Maniac, I mean, it looks like when we shot it. That's what I love. It's exactly the way it's supposed to look, the way we shot it. And that's wonderful.
So we've got to support these small distributors if we can, in order to preserve movies like Maniac.
It was nice of you to bring it by, thank you.
The 16mm film stock and the handheld camera give a certain feel to the movie, like we are seeing through Zito's eyes and seeing his skewed view of the world. And I'm sure that when the film was remade in 2012 by director Frank Calfon, that he picked up on this creepy POV cinematography as well, because they chose to shoot the remake entirely from Zito's point of view. And that makes total sense to me, as in the original, this grainy 16mm distorted view scares the heck out of me.
I don't understand why you do these things. Don't lie to me!
Because it seems that we are in the mind and seeing through the eyes of a killer. All of these factors, the 16mm, the handheld camera and natural light, which in a way was out of necessity because of the film's budget, adds to the reality of the film. Now, this has been said many times before in horror and is not new, with such works as George E. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, or Wes Craven's Last House on the Left, or indeed recently with the success of analog horror and low-budget productions such as Skinamarink, that all caught audiences' attentions due to their nightmarish quality, which is a result of creative thinking and how to realize ideas on a low budget, embracing lower quality and lower budget limitations.
Because we started this picture with only $48,000. We shot this movie in 16mm, which was a big secret at the time because I felt if anybody knew we shot it in 16mm, they would never take the film seriously. You know, back then there was no Steadicam. I mean, we did all the stuff handheld, and it looks good. I mean, I had an argument once with a producer on a picture I did, and I did a shot handheld, and the producer actually argued, why didn't you use Steadicam? And I said, because handheld has a certain energy to it that a Steadicam doesn't. All they could see were the bumps, and I saw it as being part of making it work. And I think over here, it would have not have been better with a Steadicam.
I think Maniac, and indeed these other films, succeed because the limitations embraced by the filmmakers create a reality that is believable, but also, especially in the case of Maniac, a heightened reality that is terrifying because Lustig used simple sounds of reality, and through choosing to shoot a distorted, shaky, POV-like handheld camera style, just like he did with the sound, he made us see through the distorted view of a maniac.
You have to be careful. You have to listen to me. We can't live like this.
Lustig said in commentary that he wanted to create a film from his gut that would frighten people. And I think he succeeded immensely with his work on Maniac. At the time of its release, Maniac was blasted all over the media as being too violent, too gory, and was actually one of the only movies ever to be refused ad space in the LA Times.
Visually violent and sexually explicit poster for a new movie called Maniac is arousing a great deal of anger within the women's community in Los Angeles. They say that posters like this one contribute to violence against women. When one of the offensive billboards for the movie appeared on the property of the R&B custom shop in West Hollywood, the owner became so infuriated she decided to take matters into her own hands. With the help of her colleagues, white paint, and a roller, this mother of 2 young children made the Maniac advertisement disappear.
I'm sitting in my office all day long and it just faces me, stares at me into the window, and I just can't take this. I think it's sick, it's perverted, and I just want to stop things like that.
I think that was absolutely the thing to do.
So it wasn't just me that Maniac terrified, it was the whole world. Because you know, In my experience, when people get on their high horse about something, it's usually because it's new, because it's innovative, and it's out of people's comfort zone. And I must stress that this is just my own opinion, but I think when audiences and critics gang up on a movie, it's often because it's got something to say about society that people don't want to see, and they want to keep it hidden because they don't like to see anything that upsets them or something that is out of line with their personal ideals.
The Los Angeles Times' refusal to carry any advertising for a film called Maniac. The Times states, and we quote, "The film has no socially redeeming value whatsoever, and it is our duty to the community we serve not to encourage even indirectly such violence," end quote. While it is possible to argue the artistic merit of films such as Psycho and The Exorcist, a new breed of shriek merchants has exploited the once honorable genre of the terror film. Such popularity raises one important question. What is the appeal of these films? Studies have shown that the primary audience for these movies are thrill-seeking teenagers and minority groups. Maniac director Bill Lustig says white middle-class America is staying home from theaters, except for special events like The Empire Strikes Back, and is instead watching movies on cable TV, leaving the local theaters to blacks, Latinos, and other minorities without the financial resources to tap into the home video market. Why do horror films appeal to minority groups? Well, Lustig says it's because the movies rely heavily on visual impact, and therefore language is not a problem. This could mean the issue of censorship will take care of itself in a free marketplace where the audience chooses what it wants to see and therefore, in its own way, dictates what gets made. This is certainly preferable to local, state, or federal censorship, which a very vocal portion of this country is now supporting.
But I've always thought that good art and good movies should upset the apple cart and make people happy, make them very sad, make them very angry, or even make them protest like they did with Maniac, because they make us feel something and break the mold and are not mindless entertainment. They are created things, and Lustig wanted to create something that scared the heck out of people, and he certainly did that, and he did it independently, without a studio, and off the back of his pure talent as a filmmaker. And I think that alone makes Maniac a movie worth celebrating.
Oh, no.
What's your present?
Thank you very much. Sit down.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Now, what's this? What do you think of the session?
I think it's fabulous.
In conclusion to this episode, I can now answer the question that I posed in the beginning. What scares us, and what makes Maniac as terrifying to me now more than ever? And it is that Lustig was a genuinely creative artist. He started his movie as a passion project to scare audiences, and he scared them so much that they rioted against the movie. He used the sounds of reality and distorted them, and used grainy handheld camera to make us see the sights and, I would say, feel the sounds of a killer maniac. And through his immense talent, he turned the limitations of low-budget filmmaking into a plus, and made a movie so terrifying that 45 years later, it still sends chills down my spine.
If you do what I say, they won't take you away, not ever. Not ever, I swear.
Now, there is no way that I can say that Maniac is for every film fan, or even every genre fan out there, because it is a gory and very violent movie. But I think it's violent for a reason, not for spectacle. Because Lustig creates immense tension in scenes that are long scares and so intense that the violent explosions in Maniac, for me, are the only possible way in which these scenes could end in order to fulfill Lustig's goal to push the limits of what audiences see. And in the vein of Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Polanski's Repulsion, which Lustig said were both influences on Maniac, he created a spectacular, visceral reality through cinematic technique that took us over the edge, and I think then pushed us even further, and in doing so, he created one of the most terrifying things that as a filmgoer I have ever seen. This movie scares me because Lustig created the essence of cinema with his technique and flawless design. He made me feel something. He made me feel afraid. And in Maniac, Lustig created a believable nightmare on screen. And what is cinema but the realization of dreams and nightmares up there on the silver screen for us all to share and for us all to watch.
Mommy has to punish you. You've been a bad boy again.
Thanks for listening to my take on William Lustig's Maniac, one of the only movies to ever genuinely terrify me. Let me know your favorite scary movies in the comments below. If you like this content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe so that I can reach my next goal and help me to create better content and keep digging up classics of cinema right here in the Boneyard. Take care out there, everyone. And as always, I warned you not to go out tonight. Thanks for listening.